Alright, you guys, so we are back with another adventure. Today's topic that we're going to talk about is a man named Henry Thomas Harrison. He was actually a Confederate spy during the Civil War, most notorious for his scouting at Gettysburg, and was giving intel to Robert E. Lee as well as General Longstreet to give permission or positions of the Union infantry as well as the cavalry, because no one really knew what happened to Jeb Stuart during during that conflict. He was basically like a no-show, or no one really knows what happened to Jeb Stuart. So they leaned on Harrison, who was actually an actor from Mississippi. A little bit more about him. He was born in Nashville in 1832. He was actually a Confederate soldier who joined the 12th Mississippi Infantry in May of 1861. He was later discharged the same year, though, and became a spy for the Confederate Secretary of War, James Selden. After meeting General James Longstreet in April 1863, he then became a spy for him. As you can see, he had a lot of ties with the Confederacy anyways, from his time trying to join the 12th Mississippi. Interesting fact as well, he is actually buried in Kentucky, and on his tombstone they did honorably put the 12th Mississippi on his tombstone. So I think that's great respect and great honor for him to be able to receive that award and have that on his tombstone as well, even though he wasn't able to specifically serve under the 12th Mississippi for whatever reason may be, that he was eventually discharged from that that unit in the same year that he joined them. Those questions will never be answered, unfortunately. I can do as much research as I can, but if there's anybody out there that may know anybody that may be descendants of Harrison, I would love to be able to contact you guys, even read your comments in the comment section below. Because I know that I can make a connection with a lot of my viewers, as well as some of my viewers even having some of the descendants. I've actually reached a lot of different descendants with my good friend Jenny and her great-grandfather out in Alabama, who was a 31st Infantry. And also, when I did the one on the Cherokee lady in Tennessee, one of her descendants actually reached out and shared how special it was to be able to view that, and it was a really interesting story. I'm trying to think of the name of that Indian or that Cherokee. I know her first name is Nancy. Oh, Nancy Ward. There we go. It finally clicked in my cylinder up there. It's very interesting to be able to shine a light on these history and these men and these women, that kind of paved the way for our history, and give our children and future children the ability to learn the history of America and what went on during those times. But also a little bit more of Harrison. He known only as Harrison for decades. The tips he provided both reliable and invulnerable, but the one which he will be forever famous was the one delivered on June 28, 1863. On that night, shared with Longstreet the news that Federal forces was located around Frederick, Maryland, and advancing north, as well as the information that Union General George Meade had replaced Joseph Hooker as commander of the Army of Potomac, with Confederate troops being stretched thin along a wide swath of land in central Pennsylvania. So alarmed was Longstreet by the news that sent Harrison to relay it to General Robert E. Lee, who then made the decision to concentrate his troops at Gettysburg. The move prevented the Union from being able to take on a smaller groups of enemy, but it also resulted in the epic three-day Battle of Gettysburg, where over 50,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, captured, or missing in action. After the war, Harrison moved his wife and daughter to Mexico, but left them in 1866 to go search for gold in Montana, disappearing for 25 years while his wife presumed him dead and remarried. He later worked as a detective in Cincinnati from 1901 to 1911 before moving to Covington, Kentucky, where he died in poverty. So, when I read that, it was very sad. He had a lot of marital issues after the war when he married his beloved wife Laura, and they had two daughters together, and eventually moved to Mexico, only to go through disarray with marital issues, and which led to him leaving his family in search of gold in Montana. He also was gone for 25 years, so wife never knew exactly what happened to him. Wasn't really sure if he was dead or missing or whatnot. It was a little bit after all that that she was actually notified that he passed away in the town of Covington, Kentucky, where he is actually buried. And he also died in poverty, so he was a very poor man, and had a lot of issues and struggled most of his life. After trying to get a job as a detective in Cincinnati, it just kind of just went downhill after moving to Kentucky, where he died 12 years later. Longstreet took Harrison's true identity to his grave in an application for a military pension in 1912. Listed him only as a Confederate veteran. To have a general that you never knew, never was recruited, and never had any connections with, for a man to just this general to show up at your grave and give your true identity to your grave and your tombstone, as well as a military pension. That just serves as great honor, and you can just tell how much Longstreet beloved Harrison, and how much he had a lot of respect and everything for the bravery of putting his life at risk, basically, and taking that chances of being captured by Union forces to provide information to Robert E. Lee and General Longstreet of the Confederate or the Union forces around Gettysburg, because, like I was saying earlier in the video, Jeff Stewart was a no-show, and he was not really around and providing information at certain times that was needed. A little bit more that I pulled up on Mr. Harrison. He was Longstreet's scout, like I was stating earlier. Let's see, what else can we find out about Harrison? Okay, so here's a chronicle order of some of the dates. 1832, Henry Thomas Harrison was born in Nashville, Tennessee. 1861, in May, Harrison is mustered into the 12th Mississippi Infantry at Corinth, Mississippi, which kind of goes back to him being an actor in Mississippi. 1861, in September, Harrison scouts for Major General Earl Van Dorr near Manassas, Virginia. 1862, on April 30th, Corinth, Mississippi, Harrison reports to General Jordan. He requests equipment so that he can enter service there. 1863, and on January 6th, Harrison sends a report to Major General Loring from Holly Springs, Mississippi, with details about Grant's forces moving north through that area. February 20th, 1863, Harrison reports to Confederate Secretary of War James A. Sadden in Richmond, Virginia. March 7th, 1863, he was assigned to General Longstreet and is detached to spy for General D.H. Hill in Goldsboro, North Carolina. March through April of 1863, Union soldiers arrested Harrison near New Bend, North Carolina, after being held prisoner for nearly a month. Harrison convinces his captors that he is an innocent civilian avoiding conspiracy. April 1863, Harrison reports to General Longstreet at Franklin, Virginia. Early June 1863, Harrison is sent to Washington to track General Hooker's Army of the Potomac. June 28, 1863, Harrison reports to Longstreet near Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Harrison has details about new locations of Union troops, about Frederick, Maryland. In addition, Harrison reported that within the past 24 hours, General Meade has been made commander of the Army of Potomac. This alarming information prompts General Robert E. Lee to regroup his divided army near the Cashtown/Gettysburg area, thus avoids a potential disaster. September 1863, Harrison is released by Longstreet in order to report back to Secretary of War Stanton. September 1863, Harrison marries Laura Barton in all places, Washington, D.C. The happy couple immediately travel to New York on their honeymoon. Harrison continues his entrepreneurial activities in Washington and New York for the remainder of the war. 1865, Harrison takes his wife and daughters to Mexico. 1866, facing marital difficulties, Harrison leaves home to prospect for gold near Helen, Montana. 1867 to 1892, Harrison whereabouts remain unknown. His wife assumes he is dead and remarries. 1893 to 1899, Harrison resident of Cincinnati, Ohio. 1900, in November, Harrison returns to Fairfax, Virginia, in an attempt to visit his daughter. His overture is rebuffed by his daughter's family. He then proceeds to Dumfries, Virginia, to visit Colonel Fairfax, a former member of Longstreet's staff. 1901 to 1911, Harrison is employed in Cincinnati as a detective for the Reform League. 1912, June 13th, Harrison becomes resident of Covington, Kentucky, and applies for a Confederate pension. In 1913, 1923, Harrison is resident of Covington. 1923 of October 28th, Harrison, at the age of 91, dies in Covington. He is buried at Highland Cemetery, Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. So, as you can see, throughout most of his life, he has continuously and supported the Confederates, most in particular General Longstreet and his service. So they worked pretty close together. You know, I wanted to shine a light on this man because there is a movie now that they did a remake of the movie Gettysburg that kind of gives you a better understanding of how he's reporting. to General Longstreet in providing that information of the Union forces. So I hope that you guys enjoy this video. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to my channel. Love you guys, and don't forget to check out my most recent reenactment video when I visited Andersonville this past weekend. Love you guys, and talk to you guys again soon.